Greetings, everybody. Zach again with Stormwinds. Today, what we're going to start talking about, well, continue to talk about, actually, is a device registration. In the previous video and slide deck, what we talked about was some of the provisioning with templates. Now you can create a template, modify a template, and add devices to that template. And when you bring devices into the FortiManager, being managed by the FortiManager, that you could use those templates. So what we're going to talk about today is more of the registration, some of the provisioning stuff, and a little more details what we do with the registration. So here's what you got to remember about templates. Each ADOM, administrative domain, has its own set of templates. So remember originally what we talked about was different ADOMs. Different administrative domains had their own policies and stuff like that. So they also have their own administrative templates, their own set of templates. So you can export from one ADOM to another, and you can export your profile from the ADOM, dump it to a file system, and then import it back in. So you can share them, but not directly. It's not like you can be an ADOM company A and just use provisioning template A from that, ADOM if you're an ADOM company B. You have to export it from A to B, export it from A to the file system, and then from a file system, import it into B. So just kind of remember that is when you start looking at stuff, especially if you're in an environment, some type of maybe managed service provider, you're some MSP somewhere where you're actually providing support for maybe multiple customers. Maybe you have a FortiGate device and you're supporting 50 different customers. That's a real thing. And you have a template that works great on one that you want to use it. Well, what you have to do is export it to the filing system and import it back in. Now, when you start adding devices in here, there's actually an add device wizard. This device wizard will help you, automatically walk you through a very straightforward, select this, select that, import devices into your FortiManager. So you can add devices, you can install stuff, you can import the config, you can reinstall policies, because you may have a device that is in place as a standalone and you want to import it into the FortiManager. So now you need to import the config, maybe add it to a template. Now you start to see where all this is going. This way you have a single pane of glass, a single place to manage your devices throughout your network, which is, in essence, is the whole purpose of the FortiManager. So you have a device registration wizard. So the FortiManager admin uses this wizard to register devices. If the details are correct, the FortiManager registers the device. If the details are correct. When you go to manage the device, you have to have like the pre-shared key, you have to have the serial number, things along that lines, they have to match up to be properly managed. And we're going to see some of the error messages that you potentially can see when this happens. And we'll talk about maybe some of the things you can do to help troubleshoot that. You can have a supported device that will say, hey, I need to connect to you. So your FortiManager admin will either accept or deny those requests. So maybe you have someone that's out in the field that says, hey, I want to go to your FortiManager. I want you to manage me. Well, your FortiManager admin is going to say, yes, no, is this possible? Do we want to do this? Whatever, it has to be approved. Now, the add devices centrally managed by your FortiManager, which we've talked about. This is the key and really the reason why you have it. You import all of your policies and objects into what they call the policy and object databases. You can add devices that are not yet online. So you can basically pre-stage things and say when this device comes online and it tries to reach out to the FortiManager, it is already approved. Let's get it done. You can do all kind of different checks for potential issues such as duplicate names and conflicts are avoided, especially when you're getting into the policies and objects. Objects big time, because if somebody says this is internal network and that internal network on one network is 10.1.0.0 and you have another guy that says my internal network is 10.2.0.0, now you have a conflict. And what this wizard does is it will identify those conflicts immediately so that you don't go overwriting each other's policies and objects. You can add devices through Device Manager. So we just saw in Device Manager on that in the last demo, you just click Add Device. You register your devices only in the root ADOM. And you can move things around, but it is registered in the root ADOM. If you're using a custom ADOM based upon the type of device you're registering, switch to that ADOM before using the wizard. So what they're talking about here is if you're a customer and they have their own device, their own ADOM, jump into that before you use the wizard. Otherwise, you could potentially be pulling the device into the wrong ADOM. So I put this slide in here specifically for identifying that this is a demo. So being that the demo in the FortiGate provides does not permit us to do this, we've gone ahead, got some screenshots and stuff, and put this together, and this is what you will see when you go through this as a demo. So adding a device wizard, OAuth. OAuth is your open standard access delegation, grant websites, applications, access to information. It's how you authenticate. Real simple. They're big long words for this is how we authenticate. Now, the add device wizard and discovery move can use OAuth. Here's the thing. If you do that, you got to set your legacy device logins to off and allow pop-ups in your browser. Not that I've ever done this before, but if pop-ups are up, turned off, you're clicking stuff and you're not getting a pop-up and you think it's not working, and it is working, and you could potentially spend hours trying to troubleshoot something because you forgot to turn the pop-ups off. Not that I've ever done that before, but I've just heard that it's potential. Okay? Don't make my mistake. Right? So, OAuth. Here's what we're going to do. We add a device discovery. What are we looking at there? Our IP address. This is what we're looking for. We're saying, hey, here is the device IP that we want to reach out to. So the FortiManager will reach out to the FortiGate device on the IP that we identify here. Now, when doing so, we have to log in. This is our login process right here where we're trying to establish connectivity into our FortiGate device from the FortiManager. So this device here, what we're seeing here is we've added our IP address. Now we're adding our serial number. This way we can identify the device and register it by serial number and or pre-shared key. In this case, we are showing the serial number itself. Now, we provide the IP and the login credentials. When we do this, we provide these login credentials. We must have full read-write capability. If we do not have full read-write capability, this will not work because we have to update all the databases and everything inside of the device to make sure that we have no conflicts and such. So we have to have full read-write capabilities. So if you do this and you get connectivity, but stuff isn't working, check your profile, check your login to make sure that you have full read-write capabilities. Now, on your legacy login, you have your IP address, your firmware, your host name, your HA status, your serial number, your admin username to model, right? You can apply system templates for specific common device level settings. This is with using your legacy login and not your OAuth. So this is a little bit different than the OAuth that you just saw. This here allows you to do this with the legacy because you'll get a screen like this, which will show you all of your information. So all the information on the previous slide is right here. Your serial number, your IP address, and all this. This is with your legacy login. Now, your legacy login, you can do some of your debugging by CLI, your command line, to ensure that everything is working. Now, this right here, diagnose, this is your typical commands, diagnose, debug, application, Debt Manager 255, and debug enable. This is going to debug your login and your connectivity process for the import. So in here, I would recommend that you guys understand this. I'd recommend it. Not only do you look at what you see on the screen here about the discovery, where you see the IP address and all this other fun stuff, I would highly recommend if you can get in and get into a device where you can do this a few times to really understand this, I would do so if I was you. But this is where your messages are going to be that identify what is going on, command line that the GUI is doing. Now, when you import some of the options, you discover and create your initial config. You achieve your support contracts and your IPS signatures. So support contracts. So yes, your support contracts are based upon your serial number when you've registered your FortiGate device up with FortiGate. that information is imported back into the FortiManager and your IPS signature, so your intrusion prevention system. So this here, if you have a particular IPS signature, something maybe you modified, you configured, whatever for that device, you can import it into the FortiManager itself. Now, you can import policies and objects. Import now, import later. So if you do it now, the policy package, it creates policy package for this device is created. Objects are added in the common ADOM database. This is why you can't have duplicate entries, because if you have 5 firewalls in the same ADOM, they will all use the same common ADOM database. So you can't manage these and have, all 5 say internal network and have all 5 with different internal networks. That's not going to work because they all use the same common ADOM database. This is why it does that. You can do import later. No policies and your package and your objects are not added. You can import them later using the policy import wizard, which does the same thing as before. But say you want to import all the stuff later, you just want to get it connected to the FortiManager. Maybe you have it connected to FortiManager, but you still log into it locally on the FortiGate because you want to check things out before you have it imported into the FortiManager. I've seen this done before. This is kind of a pre-stage connectivity test of, yes, the FortiManager recognizes it, it sees it, we can get it up on the FortiManager, but we're not going to manage it yet. We just want to make sure we have that initial connectivity. So you click the add device and you go through here, look, it does all of our checks. So it runs through all of our checks. It says, we check this, we check this, we check this, and it just rolls through all of our checks so that we can do this. And then once we're there, this is where we either import now or import later. So it's checking to make sure we have connectivity and can read all this data. And then you make the decision of, hey, great, we got all this data, everything looks good, let's get it in now. Or it's, hey, it's great, we got all this data, but we don't want to import it yet because we still want to do other stuff on the firewall before we import it into the FortiManager for whatever reason. This is what you're talking about there, and this gives you that ability. So once you do this, allows you to import policies. You can create a policy package under the policy and object name. So you can create a new policy for this individual device. So you have policy packages inside of the database for each individual firewall. The objects are on the common database. You can create separate object or separate policies for each individual firewall. And this goes back to start talking about your global policies versus your local policies, things along that lines. This all ties together, and that's why it's so important to understand an ADOM global policy will cover everything in your ADOM, but your individual package policies for your individual firewalls are only for those. And then you can have a shared policy between many firewalls in your environment, but not all. So you have global, you have shared, then you have individual. This brings you into your interface mappings when you bring your firewall in. Here's something that's extremely important. Again, another one that's got me before, case sensitive. When you bring your interfaces in, you're going to say this interface is your WAN, this is your LAN, maybe this is your DMZ, maybe this is a PCI interface. So when you get like those different interfaces, PCI, WAN, LAN, DMZ, all, server, LANs, all this type of stuff, you have to remember that these designations are case sensitive, and they will be throughout your environment. And if you don't do this, especially if you're doing stuff command line, it will mess you up, and you have to go through and figure out why it's not working. So this is an extremely important thing for you to get into a good habit. From what I see out there, most places I'm in, all your interface names are all capital letters. Just everybody just keeps everything capital letters. There's no discrepancy there. It is just all caps. Now, when you do your device wizard and you're looking at your objects, you're going to get some conflicts. So what I've seen done out in the fields, when you see conflicts like this, you're able to rename stuff. So internal network is a common conflict that I see. So you have internal network. It is an object in the shared database, in the shared ADOM database. What I would recommend you do is if you get something like this, you see this here, hey, we got this FortiGate, we're importing it, we got a conflict. you name your internal network, maybe internal network, but then like a dash and the customer, and then dash and the subnet of the internal network. Something that you can look at it, you could search by internal network and you can list all the internal networks, and that's great. But then you can search by internal networks for a certain customer, and then you can look at internal networks by a certain customer for a certain subnet. So there's different designations and way to do that. But whatever you do, get consistent. When this pulls it in and you start seeing conflicts, make sure you're consistent across the board. This is going to save you a ton of time when you're out there troubleshooting and trying to work on this in your environment. The consistency is key. So this here is more of your objects that are imported through the FortiManager. And here's our summary. This is saying, hey, great, this is what we're doing. This is our local FortiGate, the root of our local FortiGate. This is all good. All of our stuff here is consistent. We're all good. We're going to hit next and we're going to import it. Now, you have a report. You import reports, quite honestly, don't read them a whole lot. It either works or it don't. But if you go in here and you read them, you can look here and start looking at your import report. So if you look here, firewall service category skipped, duplicate. Then you see success. And you see, success new object. And you see success update previous object. So firewall policy success new object. So you see there, if you read through, just look at the report and just read through what it is. Firewall service category. That's what it's about. It skipped. It skipped general old 394 because it's a duplicate. So what the FortiGate did there, or the FortiManager, I should say, when it tried to import, it said, hey, we already have this object. We don't need another one. We'll just use what we have. Again, now we're being efficient. Firewall address success, name, subnet, local, OID, 525, new object. We created a new object successfully. Firewall service custom success, named, ALL.OID equals 44, update previous object. Now we have an old object. We're updating the previous object. Firewall policy success. We're going to have our policy success now, creating a new object. So if you really look at it, they're pretty straightforward. And if you just keep it simple, don't overthink it, read what the report says, and it's going to tell you whether you've had an error, whether you had success, and things along that line. So this can be useful in troubleshooting. Quite honestly, I don't use it a whole lot because when you get in, you either import it, either works or it don't. And if it don't, I just create new objects, pretty straightforward, pretty quick, takes a couple seconds. But this is here, FortiGate deems it important, especially for you people that are trying to get your NSE 5 certification. It is a nice little tool, but practical, I just create new objects personally. All right, so model device. What this is talking about supports zero-touch on-site FortiGate deployment. It automatically promotes a device to a managed device. So a model device is different than a managed device. Model device is something that's out there, but it isn't being managed. So we provision device in FortiManager that is not yet online. This is what they're talking about, your not online stuff. So you can link it by the serial number, pre-share key. Obviously, you have to have the IP address. And if you're doing this, it must be unique if adding multiple devices. So what they're saying here is if you're going to add multiple devices, the serial numbers have to be different. You can't have a single device with multiple devices with the same serial number. So you have to have different serial numbers here to import multiple devices at the same time. So some of you guys might be saying, well, why would I do that? Where would I do that? Maybe you're getting a new FortiManager. Think about that. So you had, 50 devices were on an old FortiManager. You're going to a new, you just want to import all the new ones and you want to move them over and you want to do them all at once by serial number, off you go. You also have the ability to, maybe you're taking in a new customer. A new customer has, 50 FortiGate devices out there and you want to bring them all to your FortiManager all at once, but you're not permitted to do so yet. So you stage everything, you get, they're offline. You haven't said, pull the trigger, make them managed. You just stage them out on the FortiManager, establish initial connectivity before you do the actual import. So here's our model device. Basic information on how to connect to it. So if the serial number is used, this is a CLI that is used for this, right? You can do this through the CLI, config system, central management, type, FortiManager, the FortiManager IP address. That's saying here's our FortiManager IP. So now we're going to look at well, it actually does it twice there. So what this is doing is setting our FortiManager up and giving us an IP through our CLI. Unauthorized devices. These guys are the ones that are not authorized. So maybe you are merging with another company, or you are adding another firewall to your device or whatever, and it hasn't been provisioned on the FortiManager, but yet you're trying to connect to the FortiManager and saying, hey, FortiManager, I want you to manage me. This is unauthorized. So you can enable automatic registration, but it's disabled by default. So this stops people from just throwing a device onto your network and trying maybe to backdoor their way into some type of management capabilities. But you can turn this on if you would like, but by default it is turned off. You can add FortiGates and different ADOMs if the ADOMs are enabled. So this starts to get a little sketchy on how you would enable different ADOMs, importing different things in different ADOMs. So this is just a way for them to add devices to different ADOMs. You can add multiple devices from the device manager. Policy packages must be imported after the devices are added. So once you add your device, import your policy packages. You can view all of your authorized and unauthorized devices. So in that same page of Device Manager, there was a tab there that said authorized devices, and you can also see your unauthorized devices. You look at your chassis management, right? Some FortiManager, not all, some enable chassis management. So that is under the advanced settings. And you can add under the default ADOM, you add the IP address of the manager running on the chassis. So if you're going to do some type of chassis management, underneath your default chassis ADOM, whichever ADOM that is, you have to enable and enter the device of the shelf manager. You can select a FortiManager, FortiCarrier, FortiSwitch as what they call a slot. This gives you your advanced management of your chassis management. You can look at your device count. The maximum number of devices that varies by model. So you'll see this as you get through into the world. Everybody wants to be cost efficient, cheap. No, call it whatever you want. But so you buy the smallest box that you think you need so that you're budget friendly. Well, what you run into sometimes is you get limits of the number of devices that you can manage, and you have to purchase a secondary box to expand that limit out so that you can manage multiple devices. Now, when you do this, when you start planning this, FortiGate clusters count as one device. So if you got like an HA cluster, you have two firewalls, but from their perspective, it's only counted as one. And VDOMs also count as one device. So your virtual domains count as a device individually. So you have to take that into account also as your overall count of managed devices. Your HA clusters, high availability. This is managed as a single device. Even though there can be two or more firewalls, it is considered a single device. You diagnose the DVM, your default device list, to see the cluster members. So this allows you to look at all the different members of your cluster. FortiManager is unaware of the HA sync status. So the FortiManager, all it does is communicate with the primary device, and it's supposed to sync to the secondary device. The FortiManager is not aware of that sync status. It doesn't manage multiple devices, it only manages the one. And then that device pushes the sync down to the secondary device. So HA per device management interface is for SNMP monitoring only for the secondary FortiGate. So when you look at this, it will do SNMP monitoring for the secondary to know whether it's up or down. So your management protocol there was it UDP 161. This is where you're going to manage that device from a SMP perspective. So you can do something like SolarWinds or whatever to monitor that secondary device for up-down status. The device serial number is automatically updated when a new primary FortiGate. So if you have two FortiGates, one is serial number 1, one is serial number 2. Your connectivity is to serial number 1. It has an HA sync down to serial number 2. Serial number 1 goes down, serial number 2 now promoted to primary, serial 2 communicates to the FortiManager, and FortiManager now says, oh, I'm communicating with serial number 2 now, and that is automatically updated in the FortiManager. And any config changes that you make at that point will be pushed to serial number 2. And then those, if serial number 1 comes back online, will be pushed through HA back down to serial number 1. So again, FortiManager is only communicating with the primary device. It doesn't communicate with both, hence why it only sees this as one device instead of two. FortiGate, right? FortiGate HA config is read-only in FortiManager, right? HA failover operations are not possible in FortiManager, so you don't get HA for FortiManager. Local changes to the FortiGate HA configuration do not cause an out-of-sync state. So this will not cause you to have what they call out-of-sync. FGFM is the FortiGate Management Protocol. This is what communicates between the FortiManager and the FortiGate devices, whether it's the firewall, APs, switches, whatever. So this here is on port 541 TCP. So when you do this, you have to ensure that 541 is allowed through your network. If it is not permitted, and a lot of places don't have it permitted by default because it's not a common port unless you use FortiGate, you will not be able to communicate. So you need to ensure that TCP 541 is indeed permitted throughout your network to allow management from the FortiManager down to your FortiGate devices. So you have daemons that run. This is just like normal software. You'll see your daemons. Your FortiGate runs what they call FGFMD, and your FortiManager runs what they call FGFMSD. These daemons are what's running inside of your devices. So this is your go down, you can do your show process, look at your process IDs, and look for those daemons to make sure they are running. If they are not running, then you will not have communication between devices. Again, TCP 541, right? You do have the ability to do port-based NATing. So some places like to hide what ports that they're communicating on. So they will maybe run this to some high port so that they can throw off hackers of potentially what type of firewalls they have by hiding the 541 port. Right, so protocols enabled for each interface on the FortiGate for FMG access. So it is permitted on all of your interfaces by default. Link level addresses are used for management traffic tunnel over secure connections. So your link level addresses, so you want to create a traffic tunnel over a secure connection, which is what you're doing here. It uses what they call link level addresses. Once the FortiGate's managed, the tunnel is authenticated and established using the serial number verification. This is why the serial number is so important. This is why when your HA pair updates and it goes from serial number 1 to serial number 2, this is why, because when you set up your management tunnel, it uses the serial number for authentication. This is why if you have a tunnel set up for 1, it will not manage 2 and vice versa. So this is where all this comes into play and why you have to have your serial numbers that you saw on a previous slide. This is all configured around the serial numbers for your device registration. Now for your discovery and add process. So what you do is you can set up a secure tunnel and a get system status is collected to obtain minimal information to start modeling the device. So what they're saying here is when you do a discovery, it sets up a secure tunnel and basically says, hey, who are you? What are you doing? What capabilities do you have? What is your serial number? And things like that. All this is collected so it can start the whole process. Now, once it starts adding that, then it starts looking at all the different configuration details obtained through the CLI. This way it can just store all that stuff in the device databases. So what they're saying in here is, hey, we discovered you. Who are you? What do you do? What's your serial number? Okay, cool, great, awesome. Let's start adding you in. Now that we're going to add you, let's going to start looking at all of your configuration details via the CLI so that I can start looking at what you have so I can start adding you into the management. The FGFM tunnel is initiated by either of the following processes. So either one will initiate the tunnel. The 40 manager during the add-in discovery phase. So the 40 manager, you put in an IP address and you yell out to the device, hey, I want to manage you. It'll go through the process, check the serial number, pre-share key, however you got it configured, and all that to bring up the device. Or the FortiGate itself can make a management request to the 40 manager. So the FortiGate, you tell the FortiGate, hey, I want you to be managed by manager 1. And it will reach out to manager 1 and say, hey, how you doing? Let's talk. Here's my serial number. I want to be managed. If you have the default turned off and that's enabled, there may be an auto process it can go through, or you have to go through the manual process of manually setting this up. But the bottom line is either side can initiate the connection. But again, if TCP 541 is not permitted, this will never work. So one of the first things I would do is when you try this, if it's not working and you have initial connectivity, make sure the 541 is open. That is the very next thing I'd be checking. Can I ping it? Yes. Okay, great. Let's check 541. Let's check that connectivity first. Let's tell them that on 541, whatever we need to do to verify that we get a response. So this is some of the command line there that you'll see for the discovery and add process. You'll see, the get system interface physical. You get your get hardware. You'll get your get management and all the other various stuff here that will allow you to get the data that you need from that device so that you can add it into your network. Now, troubleshooting. This is where, if you're getting into the field, okay, this is what I can tell you. This is where you guys are getting in the field. This is where you can make your money. This is what you need to understand. Anybody can be great at pushing a button when it works. When it doesn't work is when you're going to shine. This is when you're going to really shine. So like, are the devices able to contact each other? Try to ping. Basic connectivity test. Don't get crazy, try to ping. Now, sometimes ping is not reliable because some places turn ICMP off because of some inherent security risk, but at least try it. Just because ICMP doesn't work does not mean you have a problem unless I can ping it 5 minutes ago and I can't ping it now. Now we have a problem. But if ping has never worked, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have connectivity. You can't blame the network yet at that point. You have to check, make sure the ICMP is indeed enabled. Do you have sufficient privileges? Here's another one. Do you have sufficient privileges, especially when you're newer into the world? You are going to be given an ID that may or may not have all the access that you need to import new devices. So you need to make sure that you are logged into this with some type of administrator account that has the ability to import devices. Is the 40 manager in offline mode? You need to check. The 40 manager itself may be in offline mode for whatever reason. So you can look at the system settings pane and it will tell you whether you're in offline mode or not. TCP 541, is it being blocked? We talked about this a little bit. You can look there and is this being blocked? Do I see it? You can sniff for traffic to make sure that you're seeing 541 hit the firewall. This is the diagnose sniff packet command is something that you should get used to doing. This is very, 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 very helpful to be able to use this command. If I didn't say it enough, it's very helpful to understand and use this command in the real world because a lot of times I found that the logging isn't sufficient and can be misleading, but you do a diagnose sniff or a TCP dump, and some of you guys know other other software vendors captures, packet capture, things along that lines. It's the same thing to ensure that you are indeed seeing that packet hit the firewall. It's pretty straightforward. Does packet hit the firewall or not? Yes, no. There is no rule in between there. It either does or it doesn't. And then you can proceed from troubleshooting from there, right? Are the IP addresses and credentials correct? Here's one that you'll see. So IP address, pretty straightforward. Do I have the correct IP address? Credentials. So a lot of times what you'll see is you'll get like an email or whatever. Somebody will send you something in there and you copy paste. And we all do it. The challenge is when, depending on the platform that did that copy, a lot of times I have seen this add a space onto the end of the password. And then when you paste your password in, it actually has a space on the end of it. And even though it looks like you keyed it in properly, you didn't, because that space at the end is a character, which changes the hash, which now when they go to match them means you got a bad password. So be mindful of that when you see that. Make sure that you have the proper credentials and be careful for spaces at the end. So is FGM access on the FortiGate interface disabled? Now remember, we said it was enabled by default, but some people go in and disable it because they don't want people for managing your device from like internal networks and such. So make sure that it is enabled and you are able to enable and manage your device. So FortiGate, is it already in the unauthorized device list? So here we go. So you're trying to bring it in, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. Go check your unauthorized device list. Maybe it's already partially there. And once you've verified it's there, then you can say, hey, we need to authorize this device and bring it into the network. So make sure you go in there and check. Is it in there if it appears? Right? Are date and time correct on both devices? Oh, this is a good one. NTP is your friend, network time protocol. What you're going to find here is a lot of things are extremely time sensitive. And if your timing is off, it will not allow you to add devices because it considers it a security violation. So everybody should be using NTP, Network Time Protocol, or UDP 123. Make sure that you have NTP assigned and configured on your firewall. Otherwise, you can get issues. And where the issues typically come in, I have found, is if you have so like it's 2023 right now as we record this video. And I try to bring your device in and your device has a date of 1999. The FortiGate's like, no, I don't like something from 24 years ago. Or your device has, something that says 2025. No, we have not achieved time travel yet. That doesn't work for me. So you're going to see these types of things out there, just minor little details that you have to be mindful of to ensure that you get these in there correctly. And incorrect or excessive debug levels set on the FortiGate. Careful with debugging. And no matter what platform you're on, debugging is always, 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 always very intensive on your system. So much to the point of if you have too much debugging turned on that you can go in and actually cause issues when you're trying to import your devices into your FortiManager. So be very mindful if you're out there troubleshooting, and it's great that you can debug. It's awesome. Great. Happy for you. But when you're done, turn it off. Because when you try to bring it into the FortiManager, a lot of times it doesn't like that because of various reasons, all the processing and everything going on. So it just won't bring you in properly. So kind of hope that helps you get a baseline of what's going on. We didn't do a whole lot of deep dive into that, but you need to configure and apply your profiles. You need to add the FortiGate to the FortiManager. You need to be able to look at your report like we saw there, whether it's be policy, device, service, whatever, success, overwrite, things like that we saw. We can add multiple devices to FortiManager at the same time. We can add a chassis to the FortiManager. We can do the HA. And we can do troubleshooting of basic discovery issues. So this slide deck here, I hope gave you a real good foundation of what you need to look at. But this one here really, you're not going to get it just by listening to my voice. You need to jump out on demos, jump out on devices, take what we've shown you here and go play with it and get some experience on it, especially if you want to be effective in the field. Well, with that, guys, it's great talking to you. I'm done with this one, and we'll talk to you in the next slide.